Greetings, mortal. Are you ready to die? Or perhaps you still have some delusion that you can stop me? If that is the case, let me tell you a tale about the last fools that tried to stop me. This tale of putrid resistance has been retold in a game known as Hexen, and I shall serve as the judge for this depiction. Hexen was built by mortal heads on the Intech 1 engine and expands from their previous efforts, Heretic. Is a first-person shooter and carries over the inventory system from Heretic while adding a few additions of its own. For instance, you now have your choice of 3 inferior life forms to choose from. Your choices are Baradus the Fighter, Perius the Cleric, and Daedalon the Mage. Each of these fools has their own weapons and affects a few of the inventory items. Baradus starts with spiked gauntlets before gaining Timon's axe that uses blue mana, both melee weapons. It will be some time before this meathead gains a long-ranged instrument in the form of a hammer of retribution that fires projectiles and uses green mana. His so-called ultimate weapon is the Quietus, a sword that fires energy blasts and uses both mana types. Treats fletchets as grenades, and the icon of the defender grants invulnerability similar to that of Doom. Daedalon is the only one that starts with a ranged weapon in the form of a sapphire wand. This is offset, however, by him facing tougher enemies sooner than the other two. He gains frost shards to freeze enemies in a spread that uses blue mana, in addition to an arc of death that fires a continuous lightning bolt and uses green mana. The closest thing to powerful he wields is the Blood Scourge, a staff that fires rotated fireballs that can cut through foes and uses both mana types. He used the Fletchet as a timed bomb, and his icon of the defender reflects projectiles. Last of all is Perius the Cleric. While having any sort of faith in mortal victory is utterly laughable, he is the most interesting to me. Like Baradus, his initial weapon is a mere melee weapon, the Mace of Contrition. However, he soon gains projectiles, starting with the Serpent Staff, which fires split projectiles at the cost of green mana. He also gains the Firestorm, which shoots fire that bursts upon impact and uses blue mana. His feeble attempt at an ultimate weapon is the Wraith Verge, summoning spirits to seek out his enemies. However, reflection foes can turn them back on the foolish cleric. Flatchets work for him as a cloud of toxic gas that lingers for a bit, and the icon of the defender passes projectiles through the cleric's mortal flesh. In addition to the expected health vials, you may wish to keep your feeble life going a bit longer with a quartz flask that becomes stored in the inventory until used and restores 25 hit points. You may think of it as a primitive form of the portable medkit from Duke 3D crossed with the medkit from Doom. The Mystic Urn restores you to full, and if there's any semblance of intelligence in that putrid mind of yours, you'll save it for low health situations. Likewise, the Crater of Might replenishes both mana types. The Chaos device is very fitting for your mortal cowardice as it sends you back to whatever portal you slithered out of. It can come in handy when you're falling to your pathetic death. Likewise, torches temporarily light up your surroundings and help your inferior eyes to see in dark areas. The Wings of Wrath permit you the ability to fly for a time, however are restricted to the level you got them in. The Porculator amusingly transforms your foes into pigs temporarily, and the Banishment device actually teleports your foes to the beginning rather than yourself. The Boots of Speed briefly double your speed, and the Disc of Repulsion propels foes and projectiles away from you. The Dark Servant Doll summons a Molitar to fight on your behalf, which may very well be your best chance for survival since it utilizes the superior power of one of Korax's own servants. Just so you don't get the delusion that these things will lead you standing a chance against him, I will now tell you what you're up against. Korax's Eton are the most humble among his soldiers, armed with maces and a two-headed fury. However, they spawn in at random, so do not think you can relax in previously visited areas. His Chaos Serpents are able to shoot projectiles at you, granting them terror from a distance. His Aphrits are a step beyond that, taking to the skies and even somewhat capable of dodging your projectiles, often found curled up in slumber. His Centaurs are particularly shrewd, utilizing a shield to reflect damage whenever they take any. This will no doubt frustrate any fool who thinks they can defeat my forces. And if that wasn't enough, I have centaur captains known as slaughterers whose shields are fitted with projectile weaponry. His wendigos are creatures of pure ice that fire shards of frost to freeze you in your tracks. His stalkers will hide in the depths of any water source and strike when you least suspect it. There are even boss variants that use projectile attacks. His dark bishops fire powerful streams of magic and detonate upon death. His reavers are floating phantoms that are capable of draining your health to supplement your own. If you manage to get past Korox's forces, you will be stopped cold by his generals. Death Wyvern is a flying creature that pelts you with fireballs from above. Zedek is the fighting master, employing the best of his class with the quietest blade. Tradictus is his very own dark cleric, utilizing the Wrath Verge for Korox's gain. Maledkur is his mage, employing the Blood Scourge. Heresiar, Korox's second-in-command, will put your skills to the ultimate test. He has guided balls of lava, purple burst fireballs, can summon dark bishops, and go invincible for a time. If you manage to defeat Heresiar, your reward will be a quick and painless death at the hands of Korox. He will bombard you with fireballs, fight alongside his henchmen, and leave you to his army should you prove an irritation. Victory for you is impossible, and even if you could defeat him, you would get a simple text ending hinting at a greater threat that you have no hope of besting. As you have no doubt figured out by now, Hexen is more strategic and meticulous than Doom. It is often that you will have to hunt for switches, keys, or some kind of puzzle item in order to progress. You will also find yourself navigating bottomless pits, which are lethal due to the introduction of fall damage and even occasionally pitch-black areas. Perhaps the most irritating part of the game is the complete lack of guidance. While more recent games certainly can hold your hand too vehemently, Hexen gives you little to nothing to go on. The hub system, while impressive, doesn't help either, since a solution could be in one of several levels. Ultimately, Hexen is a fine classic first-person shooter experience as long as you set your expectations accordingly. What I mean is get used to puzzle solving, exploration, and a healthy dose of backtracking. And of course, don't delude yourself into thinking you can actually defeat Korox.
My servants can smell your blood, human.
The tale of Hexen takes place following that of Heretic, when the foolish mortal elf known as Corvus dared to challenge the power of Desperal, one of the 3 great serpent riders. Somehow the putrid fool managed to best Desperal. However, Desperal was the weakest of the 3. The second of the Serpent Riders, Korox, is much more powerful than Desperal thanks to the Chaos Sphere. He utilized this power to corrupt the minds of many under his potent control. Zedek the Marshal, Tradictus the Patriarch, and Menelkur the Archmage were a simple matter of bringing under his control, which he then used to influence the 3 main factions among the mortal realm. However, 3 pitiful fools stood in arms against him. Veritas the warrior, Daedalon the mage, and Perius the cleric hoped to form a rebellion against Korox as well as their former masters. Separated, they hoped to find the fortress of the mighty Korox and somehow manage to defeat him. Much like id Tech 1's own Doom as well as Heretic, story isn't a heavy emphasis in the events of Hexen. It is merely story context so that the player may understand why Korox is to rightfully be feared. Even if this mortal resistance manages to succeed, the fool is taken away by the Chaos Sphere into the realm of the dead. For you see, even if you do manage to defeat the mighty Korox, it won't make the slightest bit of difference. There are even more powerful forces at play that you cannot even begin to grasp. If you have ever played Doom, you should understand the technical limitations at play here due to id Tech 1. That being said, it is aesthetically quite different to Doom. Being more of a medieval fantasy, there is an emphasis on dark forests, stony castles, and stained glass cathedrals. Perhaps the most noteworthy is a level that is one big castle that you are able to traverse up and down through. Ultimately, the color palette is on the muted side. Magic attacks, lava, and the like provide some welcome contrast, but the environments resemble Quake more so than Doom, albeit with more grays and other such colors. However, they work well in this case to create a more oppressive atmosphere. From time to time, I, the mighty Korax, will appear to remind you of the futility of your efforts and serve as a bit of voice acting within the game. The PlayStation version ups the ante with cutscenes, however it is not the version that I personally played through. Still, I recommend watching it on YouTube if you wish. While largely based on the same engine as Doom, it carries some interesting improvements such as sliding doors, sloped surfaces, and breakable glass. If there is anything Hexen has over Doom, it is atmosphere and overall environmental detail. The music is likewise more foreboding than you would expect in Doom, a perfect complement to Korax's iron-fisted ruling. Overall, Hexen's presentation is very much a net positive. The more muted palette and uneasy music combined with the darker overall brightness levels leads to a uniquely sinister tone which matches the game perfectly. Hexen is a fairly interesting game to say the least. It would be quite foolish to say it even comes close to being as memorable or as iconic as Doom, but what it does offer is a delightfully menacing tone through a medieval fantasy. If you're into that sort of medieval fantasy exploration game and are willing to put up with some less desirable elements such as fall damage and puzzles with no real hints at what to do next, I would recommend it. The 3 classes gives you more options for determining what playstyle and your futile resistance best suits you, so hopefully you will at least reach my chamber before dying a horrific death. This has been my review of Hexen. I thank you for watching. Compared to the rest of this mortal realm, your demise shall be quick and painless. Until we meet again.